Hello guys and welcome back to this video. Today we are going to talk about the Great Wave. The Great Wave is a great masterpiece, it's a piece of artwork, and it's the Great Wave of Kanagawa, which was painted by Hokusai. Now this work is one of the most famous in Japan, but also famous outside of Japan. But to understand why it is so famous, we also have to set out the context and we have to set out the background to understand the meaning behind this great masterpiece. We are in 1639 when Japan closes its borders. It is a resolute and deliberate sort of isolation that starts off with one of the greatest period in Japanese history, which is known as the Edo period, where you had like a strong social structure in a pretty rigid hierarchy, and where dynamism was not so much contemplated in this type of society. What really happens though later on in time is that merchants that originally started out as placed in a very low position in society, merchants started to get richer and richer, and that in a way that is parallel started out movements of dynamism and movements signs that something was changing within that sort of society. It all started out with something very innocent, with something very invisible and almost not properly tangible. That was ukiyo. Ukiyo were moments of pleasure that well-off people could afford. So it all started with the so-called kabuki theater that is well known and renowned all over the world. But then it continued with traveling. Now, traveling was not really admissible outside of Japan itself, right? So the travel was within the territory of Japan. And of course, that started out a secondary trend, if you like, and that was of woodblock print. So there was a passion for traveling that was associated to woodblock print that would act somehow like postcards. So the search for small wooden tables that have printings and prints and images on it started. But initially, they didn't start out as prints and images of landscape, but only of celebrities, right? So it's only later on, with journeys within Japan becoming more common, that the prints became more oriented or more based on landscapes. And anyway, now we have to say that this sort of like inner travel within Japan have favored and have facilitated this type of trade undoubtedly. So let's start off from a different question. Who was Hokusai? Hokusai was a well-known painter, so to speak, right? He's not properly a painter, but he was well-known for printing and images of celebrities, right? So prints that had portrayed celebrities. He was not so lucky in his private life because the wife and children passed away when he was still alive. And also he died penniless because he decided at a certain point that he had to help his nephew and paid off his nephew's gambling debts. But he died at the age of 109. Which is something impressive on its own. But he worked until his last day, rediscovering himself at the age of 60. Now, 60 is not perceived in any way, shape, or form as an age of decline, but as an age of rebirth. He also stated that all the works he had done before the age of 60 was not noteworthy. He is more famous because of the 36 wooden blocks that portray the view from Mount Fuji, and that has the Mount Fuji has an importance that is social, that is cultural for Japanese people, because it represents solidity and rigidity. Certainly a solidity and rigidity that was present during the Edo period, but that still persists nowadays. So it is in this type of context that Hokusai shifts from celebrities to landscape and starts painting views from the Mount Fuji. And in this type of context, which was also economical because of the ukiyo. And in this type of context, right, then the editor has a special request. The editor wants Hokusai to start painting with a specific color. This color is the Prussian blue. That was a sort of like very light blue imported from China, and it is indeed this color that will give birth to a series that is known as Azuri, right? Because of this color blue, which could vary from a dark blue to a very light blue. Now, Hokusai is in his 60s, right? So he's a master of chiaroscuro. He knows how to manage and deal with the Prussian blue ink, and so he starts producing these 36 views. There's also another element, another movement of dynamism here that is important to underline. We do know that prior to this period in the Japanese culture, all we had seen was the floating view, right? So this traditional understanding that you portray the background, you depict the background exactly as it is, but you don't put anything in the foreground or something in the background. You just leave it there, and so the looker, the bystander, the European one at least, is slightly disoriented because of this. Now, the floating view is the traditional point of view of painters and artists in this period Edo, right? But towards the end of the Edo period, exactly when the 36 views are ordered, something else gets introduced. So towards the end, there is a limited and very restricted contact with the European culture, specifically because 2 times a year Dutch ships arrive in Japan, and so those Dutch ships allow another perspective to emerge. This perspective is a European perspective, where we always have had, at least since the Renaissance, so since the 16th century, we have had a difference between foreground and background. And in this context, it is to be set the production of the 36th tablet that is known as the Great Wave of Kanagawa. Now, this third wave is everything but Japanese art. It is not typical in the slightest. There's this big wave that underlines the uncertainty. Uncertainty because of what is going to happen. We do know that Japan will kind of like get out of their own isolation somehow in 1943 only, when the American fleet goes there and imposes Japan to communicate with the rest of the world. We live overall in a globalized society, but there's this solidity and rigidity that is questioned within the Japan itself by the enrichment of some social classes, by the openness through these 2 Dutch ships that arrive. in uncertainty and rigidity that is also present, because what is going to happen, what is going to be the fate of Japan, nobody knows, and that is all present and underscored and highlighted by the great dynamism of the wave, but also by the fact that we see three fishermen boats that are about to be swallowed by the big wave, a big wave that contrasts with the solidity, rigidity, and firmness of the Mount Fuji, right? It is again this sort of contrast, this sort of huge contrast, and that will guarantee Hokusai the fame all over the world, and for his prints to be known by us today. Now, one last element that I want also to mention here is the technique that is absurdly complicated to produce those prints, because the wood underneath is carved, so you do need a master that is well capable of doing that. Then not only that, but also basically what happens is that when the wood is carved, then somebody pours down the ink so that the color can stick onto the wood, and then we have the drawing, right? And so the second layer after the ink would be probably the drawing, and here you do have it with a barren, so in a way that it could be like flattened out onto the wood block. And these wood blocks are very little, because there are 27 per 35 centimeters, I guess, but they have been made something like and sold something like 8,000 copies. Naturally, there is a huge difference between the first copy, where the ink is fresh, and so it sticks very well, and it's like a dark blue. So again, big difference between the first copy and the last copy. It seems somehow like a watered down version of the first, in terms especially of color. But that is what made Hokusai the great artist that he is, and gave him all the notoriety that he deserved. With that being said, guys, I'll leave the comments to you. What do you think and what you make out of this masterpiece? Do you like it? Don't you like it? Can I understand what is your opinion and your taste? And we're gonna talk some more next time with a new video. So thanks for bearing with me, and thanks for watching this video. I am looking forward to seeing and reading all your comments, and please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, let me know, comment below, hit the notification bell. We'll talk some more next time. Bye bye.